Okay, so this is going to be kind of a short video. I was asked, somebody sent me a PM asking me to discuss compression of values. Now, I'm out on a beach in the middle of nowhere on the southern Atlantic coast of Portugal, and my little memory card is almost full. So this is going to be quite short, but I thought I would just take this time to lay in a little painting and explain better the idea of compression of values. So what's happening in when we're oil painting is there's often obviously a massive value range between what you can get with or what is out there with especially when you're looking at the sun and the blacks, you know, in somewhere where there's no light, and then trying to capture that with oil paint is very difficult. So what we do is something called compression of values, where basically you're taking let's see how to put this. The idea behind compression of values is that all of your dark areas get sort of compressed into a darker. You minimize the contrast in dark areas and you minimize the contrast in light areas. You also kind of minimize the mid-tone contrasts as well. But the idea is you kind of divide areas up into their value ranges, and you can do this a bit with hues too. You could call it compression of hues. But the idea is when you're dealing with a limited range, you want to make those, keep those values all very close together. So like if I stare into this cliff over there, actually that color is terrible. So that's more the color of the cliff. You know, there's these kind of dark shadows, and if I look just at the dark shadow next to the light, I might be tempted to say, okay, well this, you know, area is very light and the shadow next to it is very dark. And this is what, I mean, that looks quite wrong, but this, you see a lot of painters when they start out, they'll do that. They'll say, okay, I see in the shadow a very, very light area, and I see a very, very dark area. And so they'll look at that, the contrast of just those two things, one next to the other. Now the issue is that we have to take into consideration the whole painting. So if we look at the sky, and how light we can get the sky, basically the difference in value between the sky and this light, the sky is really, really light and this is really, really dark if you're looking at this, at the light here and the light here. But if you're looking at the light here and the dark here, these look very different. But if you look at the light here and let's say the light here, these also look very different. So what we want to do is try to see the values of the whole painting. Now, since that's kind of hard, what we do is we squint, and that reduces the values that we see quite a lot. But the other thing that I often do is I will look at a light area. So I'll look at the sky and I'll keep my eyes there. And then with my peripheral vision, while I'm looking there, I'll have my brain sort of come down and analyze. You know, my eyes are looking here, but my brain will read the value difference between these two areas in my peripheral vision. And I'll see that these are actually really, really close together compared to the light. So you want to have this area down here basically just, you know, you often want to just mass it all in quite dark. and then take the darker areas just a touch darker. So that's the idea of compression of values. You're basically taking all of the values in the shadows and compressing them together. So a good way of doing that is to constantly use the same brush. And unfortunately I don't have two cameras today, but you can just add a bit of light to your shadow brush and a bit of dark, but without ever cleaning the brush, constantly using the same brush. And then you're able to get the fact that this is a lighter cliff and this is a kind of a cave in the cliff, and you can change the colors a bit too. Down here it's kind of more ochre, and up here it's a bit lighter. And so the whole time I'm just using the same brush. Everything in the shadow area is compressed together as far as values go, and as far as hues go too, really. And like I say, an easy way to do that is by just constantly using the same brush. And squinting, there's that movie Tim's Vermeer that I disagree with vehemently. And one of the things some scientist says in it that Vermeer needed a superhuman retina to see the subtle value shifts in a light area compared to a dark area. Well, it's not true. All he needed to do was squint. And that's how artists see subtle difference in values. But the same goes for the lights. So up in the sky, we will take this is sort of the cloud area, and you'll see that if you just look at the dark areas of the clouds next to the light areas of the clouds, you might be tempted to say, oh, well, that's white and that's really dark, because, if I'm just looking at the difference between the cloud and the shadow under the cloud in relation to each other. But just like we look here, just like we look in the sky and then think with our peripheral vision about the value difference between two areas in shadow, we can do the same where we look at we look at the shadow area and think about with our peripheral vision, think about the value difference in the sky. So if I look at the darks in here and then think with my peripheral vision about the difference between the light and the dark in the sky, I can see that actually the light and the dark in the sky in relation to this are really, really close together. So the dark part of the cloud is slightly darker than the light part of the cloud, but the light part of the cloud isn't white. It's just a slightly lighter gray, and these values and hues are also going to be very compressed. So that's the idea of compression of values. Anywhere where you have a big light area, you want to keep all the lights very close together. And anywhere you have a dark area, you want to keep all of the darks very close together. And there's sort of a school of painting that's out there right now, and they're producing really beautiful work. And this isn't meant as to be offensive, but they've kind of exaggerated. A lot of them come from illustration backgrounds, and they've taken this compression values and they've really exaggerated it, and it's very effective. So it's something you could play with on your own and produce really interesting work. But just to take, in clothing, I don't know if you can see my jacket here, but the lights and the darks of the clothing, they'll often take the lights really, on a dark piece of clothing, they'll take the lights really, really dark, and it looks really good. And but it's sort of an exaggerated effect of this compression of values. So I hope that helps, and unfortunately I think I'm going to lose you now, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the film, but that's compression of values in a nutshell. And feel free, you on Patreon, to send me messages if there's anything you're curious about, and I will try to answer them when I'm out here in the field, okay? Actually, a couple more things. I'm back in the studio now, and this is the finished landscape. And I just wanted to sort of mention a couple of other things in regards to compression of values. I missed the opportunity when I was out there to actually talk about the beach, because beaches are a great area for showing off our compression of values. If you look at the beach here in the photograph, the dark areas tend to be, especially because they're surrounded by white, or sort of this light beach color, they tend to really stand out, whereas you actually want to lighten those little dark accents quite a lot, and really keep the values all light in the beach. Any really dark area is just going to jump out slightly too much. And then another thing I wanted to show you is this Corot painting. Because for me, this was sort of when this idea of compression of values really clicked, was standing in front of this painting. I think it was in Paris. And I wanted to show you, it's not just a recent idea, but you can see here, I look at Corot's bushes and trees, and if you look out your window and look at any sort of backlit bush or tree, you can see that there's quite a strong contrast between the lights and the darks. But you can see how he has really reduced all of the values. Anywhere where there's a tree, the lights and the darks are very, very close together, especially down here in these bushes in the middle ground, with the water around it. You can see that the lights and the darks are really close together. Over here in the shadows, any sort of detail is almost lost. In the bridge, it's all very simple, the darks. And then in the lights as well, from the distant mountains to the lights in the sort of muddy water, and over here in the path, you can see that everything is very compressed in the sense that each sort of element is, the lights and the darks are kept very close together. So I've always loved this painting, and I think it's a really good example of compression of values in a plein air landscape painting. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them here in the comments, or you can send me a message and I will be sure to answer them. Thanks for watching.